Hey guys, what is up? What is up? My A Push peeps doing their work like they should, doing their work like they should. So today we're going to wrap up chapter 6. So we've already talked about a lot of chapter 6, but not the whole thing. We got to wrap it up. So today is going to be all about the Constitution, origins of the American Republic. I just got to say, guys, let's just pause before we officially get started. I don't know about you, but this is a sweet two-part title. Two-part titles. Oh, I love them so much. I love them so much. So where should we start today? We're talking about the American Revolution. Let's start here. My PowerPoint's going to work. There it goes. So the Americans win the Revolutionary War. The first set of colonies to overthrow a mother country. That's a big deal. So Americans win against the British and they gain independence. And now they have to decide what kind of government are they going to have. Britain's gone now. The monarchy, the king, King George III, he's gone. So what are they going to set up? That's a task. That's quite a significant task. That's an undertaking that they got to figure out. So what they decide is they decide for state sovereignty as their form of government. So sovereignty is rule. So the states are going to rule as their form of government. That's what they decide. So this is what we call the Articles of Confederation. This is America's first form of government. It's no longer around. It ain't here. Today we're underneath the Constitution. The Constitution, though, was not America's first form of government. America's first form of government was the Articles of Confederation. So what did this do? This is basically state sovereignty. The states are the ones with all the power. The Articles of Confederation loosely unify the states under a single governing body, the Confederation Congress. So in our government, we have like state governments and we have the federal government. That's like the government that's in Washington, D.C. Underneath the Articles of Confederation, the states had almost all the power. And this is going to be a problem eventually. But the states have all the power. And that Confederation Congress, the federal government or the national government, not a whole lot of power. Not a whole lot of power. No power to tax. No chief executive, so no like president. No national judiciary, so no national court system. These are going to be, again, these are going to be problems of America's first form of government known as the Articles of Confederation. No power to regulate interstate or foreign commerce. The government, I should say to be specific, the federal government has no power to regulate trade. Say what? No national currency. All the states had their own currencies. I'm going to go back really quick just for a second. One that I did not put up here, but I should have put up here, is no like federal or no national military. The states are going to have their own military. We're going to have the Massachusetts military, the Virginia military, the New Jersey military, but no national military. So this is the Articles of Confederation. Essentially, big idea, professional historian tip, guys, weak central government. Their national government, which is their central government, which is another word for their federal government, is going to be weak. The strength was with the states. Now let's think about this for a second. Why? We got to ask ourselves why. Why does this new country, the United States of America, want state sovereignty? Think about that. Why do they want state sovereignty? The reason is because of the former government that they were ruled under. They were ruled under the monarchy. The monarchy in England was a strong central government, and they were doing some cray-cray that they shouldn't have done, according to the Americans' eyes. The Americans thought that the British monarch had too much power. Remember all those acts, the Stamp Act, the Molasses Act, the Sugar Act, all that stuff. And it's not just the monarchy. I mean, really, I guess specifically I should say Parliament. But Parliament's still part of the central government in Britain. So America's going to say, wait a second, we can't have a strong central government. We need strong state governments because states are more local. States really know what we want. However, like these things like I just listed, these are going to be problems for the Americans. A recession is going to hit. The Articles of Confederation could not tax, create trade policies, create national currency, or regulate how states acted with other countries. So, problem. We're after the American Revolutionary War. There's a lot of war debt. How will they pay? How will America get its money? It has no power to tax. The federal government has no power to tax. So, how's it going to do this? Well, it's not. That's why it's a problem. That's why the Articles of Confederation are eventually going to fail. Recession hits the states. And this is another factor that's going to lead to America getting rid of those articles and adopting a new form of government. Shays' Rebellion. So think about what's going on right now. We have a recession in America. States need money. People need money. There's not a whole lot of money going around, if you will. So Massachusetts was bankrupt, just like all the other states. The war had just ended, and it needs money. Well, when states need money, when governments need money, what's one way that they're going to get money? They're going to increase taxes. So because Massachusetts was bankrupt, they increased taxes. Now this recession that's going on is going to hit a particular group of people very, very hard, and that's going to be the farmers. One particular farmer, Daniel Shays, he's going to owe a lot of money. He's a farmer. He's going to owe a lot of money. By the way, he was also a former, I shouldn't say former, but he was a veteran of the Revolutionary War. He never really got paid for fighting in the war. But that's besides the point. So he's a farmer, and he's going to lead this rebellion, really this revolt, to protest these new taxes. He doesn't agree with them. And guys, you have to remember that a lot of these people that can't pay their debts, like farmers, they're going to be jailed. Particular merchants and other business owners want their money back. And if farmers can't give it to them, they're going to be thrown in jail. So if I'm not mistaken, this Daniel Shays is going to lead not only this rebellion, or within the rebellion, he's going to go to prisons and release farmers because he's saying that it's not right. So, okay, what's the point of Shays' Rebellion? What's the point? This last bullet point, this fifth bullet point, so big, professional historian tip right here. The Shays' Rebellion is significant because it's going to raise awareness of the ineffectiveness of the Articles of Confederation. Because we had this rebellion going on, we had this revolt. Who's supposed to stop those rebellions and revolts? The military. That's right, I forgot. Guess what? There's no national military. So it's going to really show the ineffectiveness of this. Now, the Massachusetts military will get involved, but again, that's besides the point. Now, here's a little bit of irony in history here. Remember what Thomas Jefferson is going to steal from John Locke? This idea that if the government is not protecting people's rights, what can the people do? Overthrow the government. And Daniel Shays is saying, yep, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to overthrow the government here because the government's not protecting my rights. So the powerful, the elite the people that are involved in the Articles of Confederation are going to say, yeah, you know what? These articles need to be changed some way. We need a new form of government because the central government or the federal government, the national government, doesn't have enough power to do what it needs to do. So, states are going to get together, all the states except for Rhode Island here, and they agree that they needed to scrap the Articles of Confederation and they need a new framework for their government. They're all going to meet in Philadelphia to do this. And this is called the Constitutional Convention, baby. That's right, 1787. George Washington, is going to be the presiding officer. He's the leader of this convention. Boom! That's where they're going to be. That's right, Independence Hall. Oh, I love it. I was there, but I missed George Washington. That's okay. All right, so who are the people here? So we have George Washington right here. He's going to be, George Washington is right here. Where's my cursor? There it is. So these people are well-read, well-bred, well-fed, and well-wed. So James Madison, he's known as the father of the Constitution. We know a lot about this convention because of all his notes. If it wasn't for his notes, we wouldn't really know a lot about this. By the way, you don't have to write this down. This is just for a little extra information because I know your brain loves a little extra information. George Washington's the presiding officer, of course. Benjamin Franklin is going to be the elder statesman. He actually is going to fall asleep and take some naps at the Constitutional Convention, but that's okay. He's the statesman. He's allowed to do that. Gouverneur Morris, he's going to be responsible for the final wording of the Constitution. And then Alexander Hamilton, he's going to be probably the most forceful supporter of a strong central government. Again, that's like the national or the federal government. Today, it's in Washington, D.C. Oh, shoot, that's right. Poor show, hanging out with some of the constitutional peeps. Bam! There's me with George Washington. This is actually like a life-size statue as well. So you can see how tall George is. Alexander Hamilton, you can see how short he was. All right, so what do they agree on? You don't have to write all of these, but I would say put 2 or 3 and you'll be fine. So when they meet in Philadelphia for that convention, here's what they agree upon. They need to get rid of the articles. We're getting rid of that old form of government. It's not working. The states have too much power. Central government does not have that much. So they're going to establish, they agree to establish a Republican form of government. Put this down, guys, in your notes. This one is important. A Republican government is a government that it's basically in what we call an indirect democracy. People rule through representatives. So put that down for Republican government. People rule through representatives. It's not a straight democracy. In America, we don't have a direct democracy, a straight democracy. More on that later. We're going to establish a constitutional government, a government that's based upon a document. Also, it's going to be balanced. No single interest will dominate. Voting rights are going to be for property owners only. So if you don't own any property, you are not allowed to vote in this new government. Again, who own property? Not ladies. Men did. White men did. Not all white men could vote, though. Just those that own property. They want a stronger central government than before. They want to protect property rights. After all, guess who? Just guess who are some of these people? Who are all these people that are at this convention? Well, they're property owners. They want to protect their own interests. They also agree that they're going to keep all the proceedings secret. And there's a bunch of stories about this, how they're going to open windows and all that good stuff, but we'll get to that later. Now, there's some areas of disagreement. They're going to disagree on how states should be represented. So we're going to send representatives to represent us to our national capital. But how? How do we decide upon representation? Well, the large states are going to favor the Virginia Plan. Virginia Plan, very, very important. I would underline this if I were you. Virginia is going to say that our representatives should be based on the population of the state. Therefore, the larger amount of the states that have a larger population should have more representatives. That's fair, yeah? I mean, after all, we're representing people, so the more people living in the state get more representatives. But we know the story, yeah? The small states are going to say, but wait, what about me? We should have equal representation. Every state should get the same amount of representatives. It doesn't matter that Virginia has more people. We're still a state too. So we should get equal representation. That's called the New Jersey Plan. So they're going to debate this, and the compromise, the solution, the resolution that they're going to come about is what we call the Connecticut Compromise or the Great Compromise. We're going to basically combine both. We're going to have a 2-house legislature. That's what bicameral legislature is, 2-house. One of the houses, the House of Representatives, is going to be based on population. States that have more people in them will have more representatives. That's one house. The other house is going to be the Senate, and the Senate will be based upon equal representation. Every single state gets the same amount of representatives or senators. So in America currently, California has 2 senators. Wyoming has 2 senators. Alaska has 2 senators. Florida has 2 senators. You get the point. However, that's not the case in the House of Representatives, where it's based on population. California has 53 House of Representatives, whereas Wyoming has 1. By the way, California is the largest populated state, and Wyoming is the smallest populated state. So that's one of the areas of disagreement, but there's going to be another. How should we count slaves in terms of population? So population matters, great, but how are we going to count slaves for representation purposes as well as taxation purposes? How do we count them? Northern states are saying, hey, slaves should count for taxation. We need to count them slaves in the South so the South can pay more taxes. But wait a second, put the brakes on. We don't want them to count for representation. And this should be pretty clear. If northern states don't want slaves to count for representation in the South, that means that southern states will have less representatives because slaves are not being counted in that population number. Well, the southern states are going to say the opposite. Southern states don't want to pay taxes. So they're going to say, no, slaves shouldn't count for taxation purposes, but slaves should count for representation purposes. Because if slaves count for representation purposes, their population will increase, meaning that the southern states will get more representatives. So the compromise that's going to be brought about here is what we call the 3/5 compromise. Let me back up. Slaves would be counted as 3/5 of a person. Not even a person, not even a full person. They're going to be counted as 3/5 of a person for both representative purposes and taxation purposes. For both. Slaves are not even counted as one person in both these regards. That's the compromise. The reason why is because 3/5 was the ratio that would yield equal representation among northern and southern states. So that's the 3/5 compromise. That's what we call that. Again, I would say that's another professional historian tip of the day. So some of these things that are in the Constitution, these are just some big ideas that you should at least be able to identify. Federalism is one of them, division of the power between the national government and state governments. So here's a national government, and here's state government. This is where power is divided. That's federalism. It's just power divided. Again, with the Articles of Confederation, the states had way more power than the federal government does. In this illustration, it kind of looks like the federal government has more power, which it kind of does, but it's 1 against 5. So federalism is the division of power between the national government and state governments. In some countries, the federal government, the national government, the central government has way more power than the state governments. Something else that's going to be in the Constitution is what we call the separation of powers. So the separation of powers is just the division of power among those 3 branches, the legislative branch, the executive branch, as well as the judicial branch. Madison is going to be a big advocate of this idea of the separation of powers. He doesn't want, he wants to basically control tyranny. And he's going to talk about this in what we call the Federalist Papers. But again, he wants to diffuse power instead of concentrate power. And then we have the checks and balances as well. This is going to be Montesquieu's idea. Now, Montesquieu was an Enlightenment philosopher, and basically we're taking his idea. So we want to make sure that there's built-in inefficiency. And this is ingenious. This is like, I've been studying this, guys, for a long time, and every time I talk about this, I'm just dumbfounded by how ingenious this idea is. The government is incredibly inefficient. Most people would agree with that. But it was supposed to be. That's the whole purpose. Because if the government wasn't inefficient, things could get done easily. Like a wall or something else. And the founders had the vision to predict, to make sure those things could not happen easily. So it's ingenious, absolutely ingenious. But essentially, Checks and balances is a system of restraints in which each branch can check the other two, making sure that one branch can't have all the power. This kind of goes back to the separation of powers as well. So for instance, let's talk about writing a bill. The legislative branch is responsible for writing the bill, but in order for the bill to pass, it can't just pass the bill. It needs another branch's support, and that would be the executive branch. The president must sign that bill. So that's just one quick example of checks and balances. We can look at this next class, but checks and balances, ingenious, absolutely ingenious. Here's a bigger chart. All right, so they're going to fight for ratification. What I just talked about were all ideas. In order for this to be legit, it needs to be ratified, and 9 out of the 13 states needed to vote yes for ratification. So those that supported the Constitution were known as the Federalists. They emphasized that federal system. They emphasized this idea that, yeah, of course we need a strong central government. The Federalist Papers are going to be written to help gain support for this new Constitution. We may take a look at those next class. Here are some of the most famous Federalists. Alexander Hamilton's right here. Here we have John Jay. Now, George Washington said that he wasn't a part of any faction. He wasn't a part of like any party, quote unquote. However, we look back and he was most definitely a Federalist. Not everybody was a supporter of the Constitution, though, and that's who we call the Anti-Federalists. These people were concerned that the government, the central government, would be too strong. That these are basically like the old patriots during the Revolutionary War time. They were afraid the government was going to come in and bam, take their rights away. They don't want that. So they're going to argue for something. They're going to argue for a Bill of Rights, that the Bill of Rights should be added to protect our individual liberties. The only reason why we have the Bill of Rights is because of the Anti-Federalists. So like Thomas Jefferson is probably the best example of Anti-Federalists. All right, guys, so that's it today. Make sure you study for that quiz next class, and I will see you next time.